I ventured into the haunted Appalachian Mountains and discovered a desire for my soul. I never should have opened that door. It was just another day. Sunlight trickled through the trees as I hiked, a gentle breeze whispering secrets of the forest. But everything changed in an instant. The air grew still. A chill wrapped around me like a wet blanket. A dense fog rolled in, and I felt a pulsing dread. The Appalachian Mountains weren't just old hills. They were ancient, filled with secrets better left buried. I could hear the rustle of leaves, almost like voices murmuring my name. Shadows danced around me. My heart raced. They didn't feel like the shadows of trees. No, they were deeper, darker. Suddenly, a branch snapped. My blood turned cold. Was it an animal? Or something else? I turned, breath hitching. Nothing but silence. Just the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes watching me. I pushed forward, convinced I was imagining it. Then I saw a door. It stood there, gnarled and twisted, half hidden by vines. It called to me, urging me to come closer. A wave of curiosity mixed with fear rippled through me. I could have turned away, walked back into the light. But my feet had a mind of their own. I reached out, trembling. The rough wood felt alive under my fingers, pulsing, as if it had a heartbeat. The moment I pulled it open, a rush of cold air blasted my face. The darkness inside was suffocating. I hesitated. A low whisper echoed from the void, a voice that didn't belong to anyone. My skin prickled. So many eyes, hungry, waiting. Something shifted behind me. I spun around. The forest was gone. I was enveloped in unending shadows. Then I heard it, a low growl. Panic surged. I pressed back against the door. My heart thundered in my chest. My mind screamed for me to run, but my body was frozen. There it was, again, a loud crash from deep within the dark. A figure loomed, distorted and twisting. My breath caught in my throat. What was it? A shadow? A person? I couldn't tell. I wanted to get away, to scream, but my voice failed me. Just as I braced myself for the worst, I felt a tug, a pull from the figure lurking in the shadows. It was like an invisible hand reaching for my soul. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure lurked, its edges blurring at the fringes, as if the very darkness conspired to protect it from the light. A cacophony of whispers swelled around me, each voice distinct but tangled, overlapping into a jarring symphony of dread. I felt an icy claw of terror grip my heart. I stumbled back, fists clenched in futile defiance, the door suddenly feeling more like a trap than an escape. Come play with us. The voices chimed, intertwining and separating, each cadenced phrase echoing painfully in my mind, a morbid invitation steeped in malice. A wave of despair washed over me, dragging me closer to the shadow. The air throbbed with anticipation, as if the forest itself held its breath, waiting for my next move. I turned again toward the door, but instead of returning to the safety of the path I had walked down, I found myself standing above a gaping pit that had opened in the forest floor, swirling with the same darkness from which the figure emerged. It was an abyss, breathing and alive, the whispers now laced with mocking laughter. Join us, they chanted, their tones rising and falling like a sick melody. Before I could comprehend the threat of the pit, the figure lunged, moving quicker than thought. I felt a rush of cold air, paralyzing me. A pale visage emerged, human in outline but grotesque in detail, the features always shifting like the smoke that surrounded it. The face opened wide, revealing a toothless maw that seemed to drown in a sea of black no. I screamed, finally finding my voice, as I dropped to the ground, scraping against the rough earth. My instincts kicked in, and I surged backward, my body propelled by pure adrenaline. I needed to escape. The darkness behind the figure clawed at my mind, dragging tendrils of despair deep into my thoughts. I could almost hear it enticing me with memories, regrets, fears, loses ID buried long ago. That I fought to push the voices from my head, determined to stay present. I turned to my left, seeking refuge among the sprawling trees. But they weren't just trees anymore. They were guardians of ancient pain, warped with twisted faces and grotesque expressions, their boughs stretching out, scratching at my skin as I fled deeper into their embrace. Panic pulsed through my veins like venom. I stumbled over gnarled roots, half blind in the fog, my breath quickening with every frenzied step. Behind me, the laughter grew louder, the shadows unfurling and twisting, reaching for me. The pit and the figure faded from my view, but I could feel their presence, an inescapable weight pressing down on my sanity. As I sprinted, I spotted a narrow trail leading uphill, carved into the slope by centuries of rain and time. I darted toward it, desperate for a higher ground, praying for safety. My heart raced, the rhythm of footfalls echoing against the stone. Then, as I reached the summit, the fog suddenly began to thicken, swallowing everything whole. The world around me distorted, time seemed to stretch impossibly. The edges of reality frayed, and I heard the whispers again, louder and clearer. You cannot escape the desires that bind you. The ground trembled beneath me. The trees shuddered as if laughing at my futile efforts. I panicked further, looking for a way out, my pulse pounding in my ears. Then I saw Ida, glowing orb in the distance, flickering like a dying star. It pulsed with an eerie luminescence, surrounded by an unnatural glow that held me fixed in its grasp. Was it hope, or another trap? The whispers turned frantic, a chaotic chorus urging me to approach. My body hung suspended in fear, the desire to flee warring with a compulsion to heed their call. That I took a step forward, the light illuminating a path strewn with crawling shadows, welcoming me with promises of knowledge and power. But the moment my foot touched the ground, the earth beneath me crumbled away, plunging me into darkness once more. As I tumbled, the laughter echoed around me, a haunting melody. My screams fell silent, swallowed by the void. Just then, a surge of force grabbed hold of my heart, urging me to remember what I had buried intentionally. Beneath the cacophony, a single voice broke through, resonating clearly. It's not over, yet you have something I want. In that paralyzing moment, my memories began to surface, flooding my mind with the weight of their truths. I knew then that this was only the beginning, and as my consciousness slipped into the abyss, the darkness took shape, waiting to pull me deeper into its embrace. The void swallowed me whole, and as I plummeted, time warped around me like a cruel joke. Gritty soil clung to my skin, chilling me as I fell through an endless tunnel. Suddenly, the pressure released as I landed onto a hard, unyielding surface. I gasped, colliding with the ground, surrounded by a cacophony of whispers weaving in and out of my consciousness. I lay still for a moment, my senses reeling. The air was thick and stale, infused with a pungent, metallic tang that clawed at my throat. Slowly, I pushed myself up, scanning my new surroundings. I was in an underground cavern, illuminated by ghostly light emanating from luminescent mushrooms sprouting from the damp, jagged walls. The way they glowed was unnatural, pulsing rhythmically, as if keeping time with the beat of my heart. A whisper called out to me, low and sinister. "Welcome to our sanctuary." The disembodied voice swirled into my ears, slithering around my thoughts. I shivered, dread sinking into my bones, knowing it belonged to the entity that had dragged me here. I struggled to stand, my limbs heavy and trembling, each nerve ending sparking with fear. Fragments of my past flickered through my mind, quick like the flick of a flame. I saw myself as a child, laughing with friends, running through sunlight-drenched fields, moments sewn tightly with joy and innocence. But with each memory, shadows clawed at the edges, twisting them until they bled into darkness. The laughter, was that mine? Or was it a taunt pulled from deeper roots? The cavern echoed with a dissonance that attempted to fracture my sanity. My pulse quickened as I caught glimpses of movement just beyond the glow of the mushroom's swirling shapes, dark and fleeting. I squinted into the shadows, trying to discern what lurked at the peripheries. Their voices rose once more, soft and seductive. "Come deeper. We have much to share." Unable to resist, I took tentative steps toward the sounds, each breath growing heavier, each footfall met with whispered promises of revelation. The floor beneath me seemed to pulse, alive with an energy that both repelled and beckoned. The stone glistened damply, a sheen hinting at something unfathomable, lurking just beneath the surface. Suddenly, from the depths of the cave, emerged a figure slender and shrouded in a misty veil. Its limbs elongated and grotesque, it moved with a fluidity that defied nature. The breath frozen in my throat as it stepped into the light, revealing a face that was a mirror of all my haunting fears, twisted into a mocking smile. "Do you know why you are here?" It intoned, each word draped in a silky cadence that wrapped around my thoughts like serpents. "No," I stammered, my fear morphing into a futile stand against the encroaching darkness. "You're nothing." Its laughter resonated through me, sending chills racing down my spine. "Oh, child, you think your denial will save you? You've always been here wandering, lost in your own mind. But the truth is far more compelling. Your spirit is tethered to something hauntingly sweet." The figure gestured. Shadows erupted from the cavern walls, swirling around me like a storm. The whispers crescendoed, building into a tumultuous roar, demanding my submission. I felt as if the cavern itself was alive, pulsing with hunger, calling to my very essence. The warmth of hope began to smother, replaced with suffocating despair. Desperation surged within me. "No, let me go!" I shouted, but the shadows coiled tighter, wrapping around my throat, squeezing, choking my voice. My vision blurred as fragments of dread from my past crashed into Maya funeral, the lifelessness in my mother's eyes, a family torn apart. I could taste the grief like copper on my tongue, sharp and bitter. "Remember," the figure hissed, unveiling skeletal fingers that glinted like shards of glass, extending toward me. "You have the answer they desire." The world around me spiraled into a vortex of chaos, flashes of light and shadow mingling. I fell to my knees as realizations clawed their way free, tantalizing glimpses of a painful truth buried deep within my soul. "You want my pain. That's what you crave." "Yes," it hissed, the shadows convulsed around us, growing in size and density. "Release it. We can give you strength, a chance at salvation." I could feel my heart hammering in terror, each beat a reminder of my own defiance against the flood. In that fleeting moment, desperation rose to a peak, and I pushed back against the encroaching despair. I could almost see the path back, the luminous glow of hope just afar. Just then, something suddenly shifted in the caverna, trembling quake beneath me. A deep, guttural growl rumbling from the heart of the abyss. What emerged from the shadows, only a breath away, was something I could never have imagined, an apparition born of darkness and anguish, with a hunger that reached out for my soul. It lunged at me, and just as the darkness closed in, I could hear the last echo of the whisper, a chilling promise. "It will be your choice." In that moment, the cavern fell silent, but I was left standing at the precipice, terrified of what was to come, utterly unprepared for the looming shadow that desired nothing less than everything I had left. The silence was palpable, pressing down on me like the weight of 1,000 nightmares. I could hardly breathe, the air infused with an unsettling tension that felt like a noose tightening around my throat. I forced myself to turn, desperate to escape the looming evil that hungered nearby, yet the shadows stretched toward me like skeletal hands, threatening to drag me back into their depths. Shaking, I staggered away, my feet stumbling over the uneven surface of the cavern floor. The luminescent mushrooms, once offering a false sense of safety, now seemed to pulse with a malicious life of their own, casting eerie reflections that caught my peripheral vision, figures flitting in and out just beyond my sight, the edges frayed and dark. They danced wordlessly at the edges of my sanity, urging me into their world where light never reached. My mind raced back to the whisper, that insidious promise would be my choice. What did that mean? Would surrender grant me safety, or was it merely a bait, a twisted trick laid out to capture what little remained of my fractured spirit? Each creeping shadow I glanced at felt like a reminder that the choice I made here had ramifications beyond even this agonizing moment. I pressed deeper into the cavern, heart thrumming like a caged animal as I searched for an escape. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a narrow passageway, barely wide enough for my shoulders, slick with moisture. Briefly hesitating, I recalled dim memories that flickered like dying embers. My mother, the way her eyes had glazed over, her fading warmth. I pushed the thought away. The cavern sought to ensnare me in recollections of past sorrows, but I wouldn't let it. I slid through the opening, urgency forcing me onward. As I emerged from the cramped tunnel into an expansive chamber, I was hit with a wave of sickening dread. The entire space thrummed with a dark energy, pooling in the corners of the chamber like shadows weeping their anguish. Stalactites dripped ominous droplets of water from above, each plummeting second echoing through the silence like the tolling of a bell marking doom. That a low hum vibrated in the air, pervasive and oppressive. I stepped carefully, scanning the walls that pulsed as if breathing, flanked by grotesque carvings depicting tortured forms twisted into screams. They seemed alive, the eyes in their faces glinting with malice that promised to consume anyone who dared linger too long. The hum intensified, voices swirled, whispering secrets in a language that clawed at the edges of my understanding. It was then I caught sight of the altar, a crude slab of stone adorned with offerings of what I could only guess were remnants of previous wanderers. Bones, tattered clothing, and things worse still, each strewn carelessly as if mocking their fates. The visceral reminder sent a shiver across my spine. They had all been here, grappling with the same choice. Suddenly, the shadows erupted into a flurry, revealing their true form, distinct faces, ethereal, with eyes hollow and yearning. They reached out toward me, wailing in a chaos of longing, each voice distinct, yet culminating into one menacing whisper. Join us, join us. My heart raced, gripped by the horror of their plea. This was a realm where souls merged and lost themselves, coalescing into something immense and terrible, feeding the darkness that sought to take me too. The figure I had encountered earlier emerged again, its grotesque smile burning into my memory. They desire what you fear most. They want your heart, your pain. Surrender, it.no. I yelled, the denial bursting from me as though it might push back the shadows. But the momentum of their force was relentless, crashing against me with a tide of memory as me childhood home, laughter shrouded in shadows, the cold grip of death, and the silence that followed. The grief turned to anger, spiraling through me like a tempest, caught between the desire to escape and the pull of the shadows that longed for understanding, for acceptance. Then, in the chaos of despair, I felt an unnatural wave wash over manifestation of an unseen presence, a deeper darkness awakening within the cavern. The ground beneath quaked with palpable rage as a figure emerged from the depths, far larger and more foreboding than the ones before. It was a formless mass, vast and all-consuming, exuding a hunger that made my very soul recoil. Yet it called to me, promising safety if only I would relinquish my defenses. That I stumbled back, frantically scanning the chamber for any means of escape, when I noticed an inconspicuous passage, a sliver of light beyond the grasp of the somber dark. Hope flickered like a candle, tempting me toward salvation, a stark contrast against the malevolent whispers now calling my name. But as I turned, the shadows surged, enveloping me in a wave of despair so profound it snatched the breath from my lungs. The space between us distorted, twisting reality, and just as I prepared to flee, one chilling truth seized me. The shadows were intertwined with my identity. They held my fears, my regrets, and something far more sinister. I will not let you go. The voice boomed from the depths, resonating through my very core, a promise of eternal torment. Just as I moved to flee toward the slender light, an icy tendril shot out, wrapping around my ankle with unimaginable force. I fell, pulled back into the thrall of the dark, every ounce of will tearing against the chains of despair that aimed to devour me whole. As the darkness closed in around me, I glimpsed the roiling faces, each mirroring the blurred agony of every lost soul that had come before. And as I succumbed, the last thing I heard was a chorus of whispers spiraling into a haunting cacophony, echoing in that lonesome cavern. Make your choice before it chooses for you. The shadows surged forth, the light flickered and dimmed, and with one final breath, I was swallowed whole into an existence where nothing was as it seemed, and everything was about to be taken. The weight of the dark surrounded me, a cloak of dread that pressed mercilessly against my trembling form. I felt the icy tendrils tighten around my ankle, dragging me back into the depths of the cavern where the air grew thick and suffocating. Panic rose in my chest as I clawed at the rough stone ground, my fingers slipping against the slick surface as horror propelled me deeper into the malevolent embrace of the shadows. "Release me," I screamed, my voice echoing, a feeble rebellion against an ancient force. But the shadows only laughed, a low, dissonant sound that reverberated through me, vibrating in the marrow of my bones. I felt my heartbeat quicken, overtaken by an overwhelming sense of despair. With every convulsion of terror, my memories blurred at the edges, faces, places, sensations, all merging into a convulsive whirlwind of anguish. In that moment, a spectral figure drifted closer, its mouth twisted into an unsettling grin, fangs glistening under the dim light of the cavern's bioluminescence. "Do you see now?" It taunted, its voice slithering through the air. "You're not the first to come seeking freedom, yet all you offer is the same weakness others have shown." With one last defiant roar, I surged against the grip of the spectral chains, my instincts screaming to escape, my breath desperate and ragged. I fought for clarity, for the ability to discern truth from madness. But the shadows pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to resonate with the very heartbeat of my fears. As I twisted, I caught glimpses of the countless faces emerging from the darkness, their expressions frozen in terror, hopelessness etched into their hollow eyes. Every one of them a testimony once full of life, now imprisoned in this Stygian nightmare. They stretched their hands toward me, mouths opening with silent cries that seemed to pull at my soul, each one a whisper, urging me to join their phantom chorus. "Surrender, let go, it's what you want." Frustration boiling within me gave rise to a defiance I didn't know I possessed. I cried out, "I will never surrender. You won't take me." For just a heartbeat, my voice broke through the fog, holding fast against the encroaching dread, but the cavern responded to my defiance. The walls trembled, warping and contorting with every word I spoke. The cold tendrils tightened their grip, and I fell to the stone floor with a grunt, the air whooshing out of me painfully. The echo of my defiance faded into the menacing whispers thriving in the darkness. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure emerged, a creature of ghastly proportions with limbs that twisted and elongated, merging seamlessly with the cavern walls. Its eyes glimmered with a sickly green light, revealing a depth of hunger that churned within them. This vile messenger crawled closer, its elongated tongue flickering like a serpent, licking at the air as if savoring the essence of fear. "Did you think anger could save you?" it hissed, the sound slithering through my skin, inciting every primal instinct to flee. Despair is a much sweeter gift. The weight of my memories crashed down on me, a raw mixture of shame and losses. I recalled my mother's last moments, the frail body beneath the hospital sheets, the silence that had swallowed her whole. All too familiar, the sorrow tugged at my heart until it throbbed with unbearable intensity. I realized with dread that the shadows knew this pain. They could taste it, and their hunger would not be sated until I relinquished everything I held dear to know. I gasped, desperation clawing through the fear. "You don't own me." But as I struggled to stand, the shadows shifted, echoing anguish and laughter in equal measure. The cavern responded with an uprising that mirrored my despair. The ground quaked beneath me, far worse than an earthquake, an otherworldly tremor that sent panic flaring in my chest. My gaze darted as the faces around me warped into agonized expressions, and my resolve faltered. The mockery of laughter swelled until it consumed my thoughts, drowning out every last thread of defiance. Each tremor magnified the shadows as they whipped around the edges of my vision, blurring the boundaries of reality. Somehow, the depths of the cavern transformed. The light slipping from the narrow passage behind me faded into obscurity, thwarting any chance of retreat. Frightened yet stubbornly alive, I spotted the altar again, its foreboding presence radiating a magnetic pull. With my heart pounding, I made a reckless decision. I would confront that which I feared most, the remnants of what had been before the darkness enveloped me whole. Manic determination surged within, and I surged toward it. Every step a battle between hope and despair. As I neared the altar, I spotted a small glimmer nestled within the refugia, remnant of one who had come before. Something metallic, a pendant perhaps. It beckoned to me, radiating warmth amidst the chilling darkness. Fury and valor intertwined within me as I reached for it. And just as my fingers brushed against its cool surface, The shadows convulsed violently, erupting into a thunderous roar, drowning out my senses. What have you done? The voice of the cavern boomed, shifting from taunts to fury. Your choice is sealed. The darkness screamed, a tempest of anguish that reverberated through my bones, as my vision blurred into chaotic colors. It was then that I felt a fracture within the very fabric of my soul, and as it cracked, a horrifying realization flooded me. I was not merely fighting for my freedom. I was tethered to the darkness forevermore. The cacophony of anguished wails enveloped me. All sensation faded into blackness, and in that dreadful stillness, I understood. I had awakened something far worse than the hunger of shadows. The darkness didn't just consume souls. It desired an existence intertwined with mine, an everlasting bond sealing my fate. And then everything went silent, in the oppressive dark. As my breath quickened, I heard a whisper of familiar, haunting voice that no longer belonged to me. Now we are one. It echoed within me, a chilling promise that sent shivers across every fiber of my being, and horror took root in my chest as realization dawned. I was not alone anymore. Whoever had been trapped here before had now awakened and was clawing for dominion. In that breathless moment of dread, terror settled heavy in my soul as the shadows surged, and a new wave of darkness surged before my eyes, like ink spilling across parchment. The last thing I saw was the glint of countless hollow eyes reflecting my own, staring back at me with an insatiable hunger that pricked at my sanity, and the pulse of life dwindling against an unyielding void that echoed within. And then everything went dark. A weightless sensation enveloped me, neither here nor there, and I flitted between consciousness and a dreadful dream. The oppressive darkness clung tightly, muffling the world into an indistinct echo. But the whispers returned, insidious caresses of familiarity, slipping beneath my skin. Welcome, they chorused, a cacophony of yearning and torment, melding into a sinister symphony that reverberated in the marrow of my bones. With every flicker of awareness, I felt the tether pulling against me, threading through my thoughts like a dense fog obscuring all light. I willed my eyes to open, to pierce through the black veil, but no power remained in my limbs. I floated, caught in a dimensional rift that felt alive, pulsating around me, as if it were a sentient entity craving my surrender. Suddenly, that ethereal stillness shattered. A cruel laughter erupted, its echoing timbre sharpening into agonizing clarity. Did you think you could possess the darkness without consequence? The voice oozed honeyed malice, wrapping around me as I writhed, terror gripping at my heart. My senses ignited as I caught faint glimpses of reality. Shapes emerged from the void, twisting and crawling over one another in a distorted dance of agony and ecstasy. Shadows carved out forms that flickered between the grotesque and the beautiful, their hollow eyes now brimming with something unfathomably and unquenchable desire for destruction. I realized then, with chilling dread, that my skin was no longer my own. It felt worn and thin, like a puppet upon strings, manipulated with malevolent intent. Terrified, I strained against my bindings, only to find them woven deep into the core of my being, festering alongside every moment of regret, every crash of shattered hope. Join us, a seductive voice crooned, slithering through my mind. It carried the familiar cadence of my mother's last whispered words, a bittersweet echo of love now tainted. Embrace the void, it's where you belong. Together, we can rule the depths. The specter of my mother's visage danced amongst shadows, her face marred by a terrifying grin, the kind that once comforted me, but now twisted my heart. I never wanted this, I gasped, the sound a threadbare remnant of defiance. I won't become like you. My voice faltered only to rally once more, anger bubbling to the surface, desperate to define me against the encroaching chaos. Yet, their laughter intensified, drowning me in waves of despair. You are already one of us, they sang, stretching across the fabric of my consciousness. Every doubt, every sorrow you carry binds you tighter. You can't escape your lineage. The shadows surged, momentarily piercing the veil around me. With agonizing clarity, I envisioned others caught in the same torment, friends, neighbors, and strangers, all ensnared by darkness, desperately reaching for a flickering hope they couldn't grasp. each face a reminder of my failure, their voices melding into an orchestra of cries that reverberated around me, clawing at the fragile remnants of my sanity. Just then, a radiant light flickered at the edge of my perception, a beacon breaking through the disarray, illuminating something buried deep within a memory that beckoned with allure. But as I reached for it, the darkness pulsed violently, thrumming with rage. No, a cacophony voiced, a tidal wave of fury crashing towards me. You will not escape. The shadows swirled, twining around my existence, thick and suffocating, dragging me back toward the depths of despair. Shouting words I couldn't comprehend, they whipped into a frenzied storm, a whirlwind bent on devouring me whole. In the midst of the maelstrom, I felt my consciousness begin to splinter, fracturing into shards of torment and joy. A scream erupted from my core, fighting against the onslaught. I am not yours. I roared, desperate and raw, finally recognizing the fragile thread of power that remained unfurling in my heart. Reality fractured further as the light morphed, enveloping me in warmth, and for a fleeting instant, the voyeuristic gaze of the shadows faltered. I reached for that precious flicker-me mother's smiley as my will ignited flaring courage against the tempest of despair threatening to swallow my essence. But the shadows seized on my moment of hesitation, coiling razor-like around me, licking the very fabric of my soul until I screamed. No, don't take her from me. In that moment, the connection formed, the unwanted link between the light and the absolute dark, blurring the line between protector and predator. Abruptly, everything went quiet and the light began to dim. From somewhere deep within the void, I felt the remnants of my own self insatiably clawing its way back. Yet the shadows thrummed with energy, and I realized the balance faltered. The dark yearned for dominance, desperate to reclaim what it coveted, my soul. Then, I felt it grasping fingers of darkness sliding through my limbs, constricting, engulfing, a suffocating void threatening to strip away the last remnants of my being. I recoiled against the sensation, but it was too late, and that's when I heard its slithering whisper that seized my breath. We'll be together again, my dear. Forever. An electric thrill coursed through me, dark and intoxicating, resolutely entwining my fear with fierce desire. As the echoes crescendoed into a bone-chilling roar, the very fabric of my existence warped. Then came the shriek-a harmonizing cacophony like the tolling of doomed as the darkness writhed around me. A split second of clarity erupted, revealing a haunting vision of my surrounding skeletal landscape steeped in shadows cast from a flickering flame, the altar now transformed. Figures, gaunt and elongated, converged with outstretched arms, their eyes burning with hunger. Join us, my dear, they echoed, a multitude of voices harmonizing into one singular, thundering truth as a blinding light erupted. And then, the ground gave way. I felt myself plummet into the abyss, into an endless fall where the last vestiges of myself screamed in horror, the shadows whispering sweet temptations, promising belonging against the shrill echoes of dread. Everything blurred into a monstrous embrace, and just as I thought I would be consumed, the incandescent light seared through my chest, anchoring me in suspended terror. Where will you land? The voice echoed, laden with sinister delight as the energy surged around me. Will you embrace the darkness, or will it consume you? And with that anguished question lingering like a triumphant curse, I plummeted deeper still, the shadows swirling around, hungry for my soul, mocking in their anticipation, yet strikingly familiar. The descent seemed to stretch into eternity, the howling winds intermingling with the cries of the souls trapped within the shadows. I gasped as foul, suffocating tendrils curled around me, dragging at my very essence. The sensation was abhorrent, filled with a twisted longing that clawed at my thoughts. As I fell, the distorted images of the figures above morphed before me, their half-realized faces etched in agony and desire. Some grasped at me, their fingers brushing my skin, leaving behind a chilling mark that burned like ice. Blood-curdling wails intertwined with echoing laughter reverberated through the air, as if the mountains themselves bore witness to the horror unfolding. Then, with a sudden jolt, I landed not softly, but with a thud that sent shudders through the earth. The impact knocked the breath from my lungs, grounding me back into a terrifying reality that teetered on the brink of madness. Opening my eyes, I found myself in a dim cavern, the jagged walls twisting into grotesque shapes. Pulsating with a sickly glow, my heart thundered in my chest as I scrambled to my feet. The air was thick, laden with the scent of decay, and something sweetly alluring that beckoned me deeper into the gloom. I resisted, though every fiber of my being screamed for solace from the darkness that seeped into my bones. Faint sounds echoed through the cavern, whispers fluttering like ghostly wings. I pressed my palms against my ears, but the voices seeped in, invading my mind with serpentine precision. "You cannot hide," they hissed, dripping with a chilling familiarity. "You belong to us. You always have." With a shiver snaking down my spine, I stumbled forward, a grotesque instinct guiding my steps. Shadows flitted across the walls, watching, waiting, their eyes glinting like shards of glass. I felt their gaze hunger for me, a thousand threats coiling behind the veil of darkness. As I moved deeper, the glow intensified. Shapes coalesced around me, figures I could almost recognize, ghostly outlines of friends long lost, faces twisted in eternal torment. I gasped, faltering as they turned toward me, their mouths agape, silent screams frozen on their lips. "Help us," they implored, eyes swirling with anguish and dread. "Don't let it take you." I stumbled backward, crashing into something both hard and cold. Whirling around, I found myself face to face with an enormous stone altar, its surface carved with horrific symbols that pulsed with the rhythm of a heart beating in the earth. And bound to it, shackled by chains of darkness, lay a figure obscured by shadow and echo of myself, a tainted reflection that seemed to be pulling fragment after fragment of my soul into its abyss. I fought against the overwhelming tide of despair. My voice trembled but surged anew with determination. "This is not me." But the reflection, with hollow eyes, grinned back at me, full of mockery and revelry. "You cannot escape who you are. You crave it as much as they do." It taunted, twisting in its restraints, the chains rattling in an unsettling symphony. The whispers crescendoed, growing piercingly loud, swirling around as the shadow-filled figures closed in. They reached toward me, their slender fingers outstretched and almost inviting. "Embrace your truth. Your choice is simple," they chorused, voices melding into one dissonant song. That I felt a pull toward the altar, a magnetic force surging from the depths of the stone. The glow illuminated the horror behind me. I could see a door leading out of the cavern, a faint flicker of light beyond, yet it felt impossibly far. The shadows encircled me, a trap tightening with every heartbeat. As I edged away from the altar, my eyes caught a glimpse of an intricate dagger-shaped amulet laid upon it, pulsating rhythmic energies that shimmered with an enchanting glow, a beacon amidst darkness. I reached for it, the allure intoxicating, drowning out the cries of the lost ones. "Choose." The darkness thundered, the voices swirling into a manic pitch as the cavern began to tremble. Shards of stone rained from above, narrowly missing me as I grasped the amulet, its power surging through me, igniting a flame of hope battling against the encroaching shadows. But as I felt that light bloom within, the reflection on the altar erupted, shrieking in agony and fury. "You cannot take that from me," it howled, its chains snapping like the frayed edges of a nightmare. Suddenly, a piercing pain lanced through my chest, a cold grip that twisted and squeezed, the shadows seeing their chance to reclaim what they viewed as theirs. Stronger than before, they bore down on me, filling my lungs with their darkness as the very fabric of my power wavered, threatening to cut the thread holding my existence together. "Embrace us," the shadows screamed, weaving a symphony of hatred and desire. With the light flickering dimly within me and the throne of shadows surrounding me, I felt the choice surge again within my core. "Run," the voices pleaded, just as the shadows lunged, their fingers eager and ravenous. And in that agonizing moment, I was torn between the brilliance of the amulet's light and the suffocating grip of the shadows, the darkness that promised everything I yearned for, enticing as it was deadly. With a final, defiant breath, I made a decision, sealing my fate. But before I could act, the ground beneath me cracked, splitting open like a gaping maw of despair, and I plummeted again, this time accompanied by the agonized wails of the figures I once knew. As the abyss engulfed me, the last vestige of light streamed shredding through the darkness, merging my scream with an unending howl of the agonized souls, desperately reaching for salvation but always falling further into the void. The darkness laughed, high and haunting. Now we feast. And then, everything dissolved into an echo that stretched far beyond grasp, into a silence riddled with lurking terrors waiting to ensnare my soul. The descent did not end. Rather, it surrendered me to a new realm, one filled with a pervasive, suffocating dread that felt all too familiar. I tumbled through the foggy void, an endless spiral of agony and anguish, until I landed on something damp and cold. The surface beneath me quivered like living flesh, slick and repulsive to the touch. Pushing myself upright, I found myself in an even darker cavern, illuminated only by the faint glimmer of bioluminescent fungi clinging to the walls like the last, desperate remnants of a forgotten summer. The air was thicker here, burdened with a scent that twisted my stomach, a rancid sweetness that soaked into my skin, urging me to breathe in its intoxicating haze. I staggered, trying to gain my bearings, my pulse racing with the faintest hint of hope, now overpowered by pulse-pounding fear. Where was I? And then I heard a rhythmic thumping, that dreadful cadence echoing through the darkness, resonating deep within me. It was a heartbeat, distorted and morose, each thud drawing closer, resonating with the flicker of light pulsing from the amulet still clutched tightly in my palm. I raised it instinctively, golden threads of hope streaming into the niche of shadows around me, attempting to drive back the oppressive darkness. "Leave this place," a voice, fragile yet firm, whispered from the pointed edges of the cave. It didn't belong to any of the anguish-laden ghosts trapped within this wretched dimension. No, this voice echoed with a sense of foreboding, one that seemed to know the true nature of these haunting caverns. But before I could respond, the thumping grew louder, reverberating off the cavern walls with a sickening rhythm, drawing nearer yet remaining hidden from my view. Shadows shifted adjacent to me, thick and muscular, elongating into grotesque forms that churned and twisted with a life of their own. I froze, the amulet's warmth becoming a chilling weight against my palm. The tremors of that ominous heartbeat converged into a single intuition, impossibly large shadow lurching from the depths, a creature birthed from nightmares. It was amorphous, a mass of slithering limbs and unidentifiable features that blurred the lines of reality. The cavern felt alive, vibrating with the weight of its presence as the creature emitted a low growl, managing to encompass all my fears. I was paralyzed, torn between the pulsing light that flickered in defiance and the maw of nightmare that threatened to swallow me whole. "Release me," it thundered, a voice like gravel scraping against metal. "Join me, and we shall traverse worlds unseen. Your desires promised won't remain in shadows." A maddening offer, a seduction I could almost entertain. My soul trembled in uncertainty. The amulet glowed brighter, a beacon of defiance against the insatiable void. Memories of anguish tightened in my throat, an echo of what I had lost, still tinged with a desire to be whole again. Yet I felt the specter of temptation tug my senses into a half-forgotten lull. "You can have it all." The shadows coalesced in unison, chanting phrases that wrapped around my skull, reverberating like drums heralding a gruesome ritual. "Your loved ones reside here, all within reach if you join their fate. Embrace the truth." With a leap of despair, I clawed backward, fighting against the gravitational pull of their longing. A momentary realization struck me, a warning illuminating through the haze. They sought not just pieces of my spirit, but to consume the very heart of it, to ensnare it forever in their web of shadows. But the cacophony of tortured souls grew louder. Their pleadings morphed into piercing shrieks of pain. Fear flooded my veins anew as I remembered their faces, those still trapped between the worlds. I could not forsake them. My heart raced against the unrestrained thrumming of the shadows. I levied my will against them, clutching the amulet harder as the brightness began to emanate from within me. "Foolish child!" The creature roared, tendrils lashing out, hungry and furious. The depths of its form rippled, outlining a horrible maw, grotesquely gaping wide as it rushed toward me. The force behind it was a physical crush of shadows and despair. With a cry that tore at my throat, I propelled myself away, instinctively darting toward the flickering luminescence ahead, my only beacon against the encroaching nightmare. I threaded through the darkness, the shadows shrieking inapprehensible words as the creature lunged for me, its presence suffocating. But just as I thought I might reach the edge of the cavern, I felt fingers scraping at my skin, icy and sharp, a horde of lost souls grasping at my limbs, pulling me back into the pit of despair. "No," I shouted, panic seeping into every syllable. "I won't be one of you." But the shadows encircled me like a tempest, uprooting my flesh from hope, ensnaring me just as the creature's scream crescendoed, echoing through the cavern with malevolent triumph. Its maw drew ever closer, grotesque fangs glinting between the strands of darkness. It loomed over me, a sky of blackness, ready to consume what remained of my light. "Join us," it echoed, the words dripping with deception. "You are one of us now," and with that, the shadows tightened their grip, pulling me in as the last shred of my resolve flickered, almost extinguished when suddenly, I felt a surge of raw power pulse through the amulet, a desperate light erupting in a tumultuous burst against the shadows that I, in sheer disbelief, I turned just in time to witness the darkness split apart, a crack in the very fabric of this cursed reality opening before me. The last thing I remembered was the sound of laughter, dark, unyielding, a sound that promised agony thundering around me as I was thrust through the portal, flying into uncertainty. But even as I fell, a voice called out, deep and malevolent, thundering with finality, "You can never escape what you truly are. You will return." And in that moment of chilling clarity, I understood. My escape may only mark the beginning of an even greater horror. I stumbled through the fracture that had formed in the very essence of the cavern, spiraling into an abyss that felt like both an escape and a further descent. The moment my body hit solid ground, the air shifted, a raw electric charge coursing through the atmosphere like a thunderstorm at the cusp of violence. Everything was different. The darkness seemed less oppressive, yet it felt alive, thrumming with anticipation that I found myself in a narrow passageway, the walls etched with vicious scratches and carvings, as though someone or something had clawed their way through madness. The faint light slithered around me, casting eerie shadows that twisted like living beings. Pulses of phantasmagorical color spilled from the remnants of the bioluminescent fungi, illuminating grotesque depictions of faces twisted in torment. I recoiled, my heart racing at the sight of their hollow eyes staring through me, as though urging me to turn back. But behind me, the inky shadows conspired, still echoing the creature's promise of return. I pressed forward, determined to escape this descent into darkness, yearning for a way back to a semblance of normalcy, a reality devoid of these terrors. Yet doubt seeped into my veins, making each step feel like betrayal. "Find who you've lost," a voice cooed from behind the cascading shadows. A gentle caress of sound, yet steeped in a sinister undercurrent that chilled my blood. I turned, half expecting to see a figure emerging from the darkness, but there was only that oppressive silence thick with malice, steeling myself. I pressed onward, each darkened corner I rounded becoming more daunting. The walls whispered in a language I could not comprehend. Slipped moments from my own past taunted me, shimmering on the edge of recollection, more vivid than the reality I now ran from. Faces I wished to forget danced in the periphery of my mind, those of loved ones who had vanished, their laughter now ghostly echoes resonating in the damp air. With every beat of my heart, the looming darkness of the cavern tightened its grip, almost pulsing in sync with my own fear. The path grew slicker, a viscous substance coating the ground, as if the very essence of despair had congealed beneath my feet. I nearly lost my footing, but a surge of adrenaline propelled me forward. That a flicker of light caught my eye. The hopeful glow of an exit shimmered at the end of the passageway. Desperation propelled me toward it, each hurried step igniting a flicker of courage within me. I reached out instinctively, as if the very light would soothe my torment. But as I approached, the light warped, twisting into a taunting visage of Harvey, my brother, his face flickering like a dying flame. His features contorted in an echo of anguish, mirroring the depths of my own despair. "Help me," he called, his voice a mere whisper fractured by the passage of time and sorrow. I froze, my heart pounding ferociously against my ribs. "You can still save me, Harvey," I cried, and as I reached out, that warm light turned cold, a blistering expanse of darkness swallowing my hope whole. The fluorescent glow sputtered and faded, revealing nothing but rough stone, an endless wall of despair. "Come to me," it urged again, floating into an echoing resonance that brushed against my skin, gelid and heavy. My memories twirled in the scarred recesses of my mind, pulling me like a tide as shadows lurked just beyond the grasp of my attention. "Stop," I thrashed against the advancing darkness, fighting against the insidious tendril-like fingers creeping for my soul. Yet as I struggled, I could feel the tears blurring my vision, guilt seeping into the marrow of my bones. I camped. The passageway began to shake violently, fissures shooting along the ground, rumbling from the depths of despair, stirred by my fear. The figures of lost souls materialized from the shadows, eyes hollow and mouths stretched and silent, agonizing screams, an army of the damned. Their tethered cries filled the confines of my mind, a cacophony of anguish that threatened to break my grasp on sanity. "Join us," they wailed in unison, their voices stitching together threads of despair. "You are one of us, you belong," I raged against the onslaught, clutching the amulet as it began to pulse, its warmth encompassing me like a protective embrace. It was both a lighthouse and a noose, the threshold of salvation and the lure of madness. Maybe if I could find a way to harness its power, I could fight back against the horror that loomed. I needed liberating light to push me through the dark, but just then, hands cold, skeletal and far more substantial than any ethereal specter, wrapped around my wrist. My heart raced with terror as I turned, meeting the gaze of a woman draped in sorrow, her face a chilling mask of familiar anguish. "Help! I'm trapped!" she shrieked, her form shifting as if reality itself struggled to contain her. "You must," her voice faltered, distorted by the harsh echoes of other souls, a symphony of confusion that began to drown me. I yanked against her grasp, fighting the encroaching tide, but the shadows enveloped me, their whispers clawing at my consciousness, a maelstrom of internal chaos. "The soul you seek is tethered here, forever," they shrieked, consuming my will, as horror twisted my reality once more. And just as I felt the suffocating darkness dragging me under, a light erupted in the far reaches of my mind, a guttural scream filled with unfathomable rage. "Release her." With that, the earth trembled beneath my feet, the ground resonating with a force that felt like judgment. An explosion of sheer light erupted around me, and for a fleeting moment, all fell silent. But the low, dark laughter consumed me again, deafening in its echo, reverberating ominously through the passage that I told you. "Dear one," the creature's voice hissed like a beckoning siren, "you will return, and when you do, the darkness will be waiting for you." As I felt the building resonance crack the very air around me, my heart faltered, and all I could do was scream as the chaos enveloped my senses, the pull of despair drawing me back into the vortex of uncertainty. I was back in the cavern. The weight of the overwhelming dread pressed against my chest tighter than ever before. Darkness ebbed and flowed like a living entity, each pulse syncing with the relentless beat of my heart. I could feel a mocking presence circling around me, whispering sweetly tainted promises just out of reach. "You thought you could escape?" it hissed, the voice laced with disdain. "You've tasted your fear, and now you long for more." The walls wavered as if they whispered secrets, alive with the whispers of countless souls that once roamed these forsaken depths. I stumbled, retracing the steps that had brought me to this horrifying realization. The very essence of my being had now intertwined with something far more sinister than I could fathom. I was bound to this place, tied irrevocably to the shadows that craved my soul, just as I craved the light. The creature I had encountered loomed before me, a vast silhouette that defied comprehension. "Return to me, child. Your journey has just begun." Each word dripped like poison, enthralling and intoxicating, pulling apart the tendrils of my resolve. I could feel my memories slipping, seeping deeper into the chasms of doubt as figures emerged from the darkness, faces I once loved twisted with despair, beckoning me to rejoin their ranks. "Harvey," I called out, desperate to find him in the shadows. But each face was a mere reflection, a warped version of those I lost, remnants of long-dead hopes clawing for resurrection within this abyss. I craved to save them, but the reality settled coldly in my chest. They had become part of a fraying tapestry of sorrow. It's all right, one soul whispered, her eyes gleaming with a hollow light. You can reunite with us. Just surrender. No, I screamed, clenching the amulet like a lifeboat amidst a storm. I couldn't succumb to this darkness. I had fought too long. The shadows lunged at me, feral and hungry, ensnaring my legs as I writhed against their grasp. Panic filled my lungs like venomous smoke churning into chaos. Feel the freedom, the creature crooned, and at that moment, my world shattered. The amulet shined brutally bright, illuminating the cavern with a fierce brilliance that pushed back the suffocating shadows. The figures shrieked, contorting as the brilliant light claimed its territory, and I lunged forward into the streaming glow, propelled by sheer instinct. My pulse thudded in my ears, drowning out the cries as I fled. Give yourself to us, they howled, their voices mingling into a symphony of despair, trying to pull me back into their embrace. I felt the oppressive force of their will creeping toward me, invading my mind, clouding my vision with their haunting laughter. Through sheer will, I grasped the amulet tighter, channeling the light into a burning beacon of hope, pushing against the darkness that screamed my name. The blinding light wrapped around me like a cocoon, protecting the last remnants of my spirit with fierce determination. Just as I thought I would be consumed again, I broke free and tumbled into another realm, a thin veil that shimmered and pulsed in raw, vibrant colors. I gasped for breath, the thunderous echoes of the cavern fading behind me. But I was not free. The shadows seeped through the cracks of my mind, whispering, taunting. I could feel their presence lingering, the heartbeat of the cavern merging with my own. I was not their captor, but rather part of a gruesome pact that tied me to their dimension forever. Every step I took, I felt their eyes upon me, unyielding and unrelenting. You will return, child. Through every doorway you walk, your essence will beckon to us. A shiver crawled up my spine as I realized the horrifying implications. The shadows now existed within me, entangled with my spirit, and no matter how far I ran, they would always be just behind me, lurking in the edges of my soul. And then, it hit me with grotesque clarity. I hadn't escaped. I had merely become a vessel, a permanent link to the horrors below, like an open wound I couldn't hide. Those I sought to protect had become a part of this twisted reality. With a sharp intake, I saw my fate laid bare before me. Yes, I had fought valiantly against the darkness, but now the shadows would always be with me, whispering vile secrets that hummed beneath my skin, eliciting a new hunger I hadn't known existed. In the eerie silence that threatened to swallow me whole, I understood my essence was bound to the cavern forevermore, irrevocably tethered as both prisoner and keeper of its malevolent secrets. And even as I emerged into the light, the final whispers trailed after me, a cackling laughter echoing in the depths of my mind, a chilling promise of an inevitable return. Welcome home, they cooed with sinister delight. The darkness is always waiting for you.